I know it's a new year. We've all made resolutions. We got new goals, the old fashioned saying, new year, new me. People having vision board parties, the whole 9 yards. This is the typical way you bring the new year to make change. But I said with this video, originally I wanted to go about that way, but I'm like, you know what? That doesn't really work, does it? Because every year I see the same people for the last maybe 2 decades online posting what they're gonna do, and it doesn't happen, and the next year posting it again. But I thought that maybe it's because it's how they're thinking, because obviously at Mind Body One, we get your mind right. So we need to look at it that way. So instead of going about it, how to change a resolution or a behavior in the straightforward approach, let's change how you think using cognitive biases. A cognitive bias is basically how our brain makes these misjudgments, trying to get to a quicker point to make a decision, but sometimes these lapses in judgment can mess us up. But if we understand them at a foundational level, I think that truly can help us make less of those mistakes and have better aspects of how to change a behavior, because if we're not making the wrong judgments, we have a better chance to successfully achieve what we're trying to do. So we're gonna talk about 14 cognitive biases to help you in the new year. So the first one is probably the most popular one, confirmation bias. Now, if you haven't heard of this one, this is when you take previously conceived notions or information that you already have about a topic and you only go off of that. You only look into what that information says. I guess the easy example we could do with this is politics. Every 4 years in America, there's a presidential election. Regardless of who you vote for, there's a side you're probably gonna lean to more. Now, where I use this example is because we tend to look at the candidate we want and all the things that back up their point, what they agree on as far as healthcare, policies, you name it. We're gonna bring that information in a debate or an argument and say, this is what they're doing. And they're only going to bring that up and negating any new information that could come from the other side. Now, this is a problem because if you do this when it comes to just changing yourself, how do you truly get better? If you're always going off what you already know, yes, you get good at it. That's like the athlete who only works on one skill. Like imagine if Steph Curry only worked on shooting. Yes, he's a great shooter, but he also has to work on defense, right? So you have to be able to see the other sides and work on the other aspects of what you don't already know or don't already do. So don't let confirmation bias hold you back. Now, the next one, anchoring bias. Now, to use this one, this kind of goes off of confirmation bias, but it's basically taking the first bit of information and using that and no longer taking anything after it because the first piece is what you want to hold on to. Let's give an example. Let's say I want to sell you a car and you come to this, hey, Nick, how much for the car? And I say $5,000. Like, oh, cool. Give me about a week. I'll get you the money. I'll buy the car. Great, right? You come back a week later with the $5,000. And I say, you know what? I actually misquoted you. There's a few parts I put into it that makes it a little more valuable. Actually, I'm gonna need $8,000. Now, while $3,000 more might be fair given what the upgrades I did to the car, you were told $5,000 and our brain is primed for that. So it's gonna say, why would I pay more? I've already been given the value regardless of why it changed. And that's the same thing we might do with our behaviors or our goals because we say, hey, this is what I wanna accomplish. And once I've heard that piece of information, anything after that is irrelevant. You get this tunnel vision, and that could be a problem. You don't want to be too over-focused on the first thing you hear that anything after that can't help you get better. You want to be able to have that flexible thinking and know, while this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I've been given, this is what I know, I can shift my thinking when needed, regardless of what was presented at first. Now, the availability heuristic bias. Now, let's start with this. What if I asked you which is the most dangerous job? I'll put them on the screen. Fireman, fisherman, policeman, or farmer? I'll give you like 2-3 seconds. Think about it. Pause if you need to think more. Don't cheat. Ready? Okay, is it fireman? Nope. Is it farmer? It's fisherman. How many people guessed that? Now, that's where the availability bias comes in. Your brain probably thought fireman or policeman because when you think in general, what's more dangerous? Police have guns, firemen getting hot blazes. But you gotta think, how frequent does a police actually discharge their gun? A lot of people don't think about that. But the frequency is higher because we see the news when there are shootouts. So it makes us think, oh, this is the most readily available piece of information. Therefore, this is what I should go with. Fishermen is more dangerous because we don't really think about deep sea fishing, which is definitely very dangerous because they're in the high waves, the boat can capsize, and drowning is actually the cause of those deaths. So it's really the most dangerous job based off the likeliness of dying on it, and it's based off of the fact that we don't think about what all comes with it, and that's the availability bias. So think about what you're doing. Don't get caught up in, oh, I can't do this, or this is not right, because you only heard, hey, for example, eggs are bad for you. You heard that somewhere, so you think, oh, it has a lot of cholesterol. By your logic, oh, cholesterol is bad, therefore you don't eat eggs. But we negate the fact that not all cholesterol is the same, right? This goes perfectly with those people on the nutrition and fitness goals, because there's HDL and LDL cholesterol. HDL is good for your heart, LDL is bad. So you got to know that eggs are HDL, so that actually helps you. But your brain is so caught up into, oh, this is all I know, so I'm gonna put that first. So make sure you don't let this skew your judgment to the point where you're avoiding certain things because your brain only goes off the first piece of information that you can actually think of. Now, this next one is the Dunning-Kruger Effect. This is a very popular one. You might have heard it before, but this is when you overestimate your ability and competence at a certain skill. Therefore, you can't rate yourself amongst people who are better. Perfect example. Have you ever gotten in an argument with someone on a topic that you know a lot about, but they might have heard something in passing on the news and they think they know more than you? But since they're so uneducated on the topic, they can't see that they really can't bat with you. But this is a problem, because how do we get better if we only think what we know is all there is to know? Now, there was a study back in 1999 at Cornell University with David Dunning and Justin Kruger, thus the name Dunning-Kruger Effect, where they wanted to see if their students would rate themselves effectively given a psychology test in their class. So after they took the test, the students were then asked to say, how do you think you did? Now, the ones who scored fairly high, they said, I probably did amongst the average to high average. While the ones who did worse than average said they did amongst the high. And the reason is they're overconfident in their abilities because they can't recognize it. So this is a perfect example of why you can't just go off of what you know. Once again, being able to step out what you don't know and listen to other people that may have a better take on it. So don't let that hold you back. Now, that could be a perfect segue to this next one called the halo effect. Now, the halo effect is when you attribute good traits to someone simply off of one set trait. Now, this could be looks, this could be popularity, it could be fame, money, whatever it is. You take that one trait and you extrapolate it to everything else that they do. Now, this could be a very big one considering people doing New Year's goals and resolutions, because imagine you see one of these health or wellness gurus who are, say, qualified in one field. They have a doctorate or maybe a medical degree, and they're very good at what they do in that niche. But since you trust so much that they're good as a surgeon, that when they talk about fitness, nutrition, you attribute it to that. And this is a misconception because they might not know anything about those things, but you take their word at face value because you trust in what they're very good at. And this is what the halo effect does. Think like an angel. You see the halo around their head. They give this bright light. They glow. There's something good. They're a blessing. And this is what people do. So when you're thinking about making your changes in behavior, achieving what you need to do, be careful who you get it from. Not saying don't believe them, because they can be educated under tears. We talk about a lot of different topics on this channel within the mental realm and sometimes out of it. But you got to make sure that it's not just because you love them as a celebrity or trust in them because they're big and famous. So don't get caught up in the halo. Now, this next one I'm going to talk about is the sunk cost fallacy. Now, this one I think is very important when you talk about achieving a goal, because it takes time, effort, consistency, progress, and that could be a good thing if you're doing the right things and you're on the right track. But what happens if you're doing the wrong things and you're not progressing? This is where the sunk cost fallacy comes in, because it's basically putting more effort or more investment into something simply for the fact that you have a longer history of already doing it. Let's use something like a relationship. Sometimes we get involved with people romantically, or it could even be a friend relationship, and you have years of experiences, some good, some bad. But since you put so much time, let's say 12 years into it, it seems hard to say, I'm just gonna let it go, because 12 years is a long time, no matter how you spin it. But does it outweigh the progress of what you're trying to do? And in the sense of relationships, that is a hard thing. The same thing with achieving your goals. If you spend 3 months doing a certain workout routine or a certain degree program, and you feel like, hey, this is not working, the fact that you put so much time and effort into it is gonna make your brain think, keep going, you went this far, why give up now? But sometimes you gotta pivot and make a different route to get to that goal. So don't get caught up in how much you put into it, because that might not give the full story in the proper direction to get to where you're trying to be. Now, as humans, we're wired for negativity. And this is not a bad thing. You think negative, why be so negative, right? But negativity has its place because we can't always be happy-go-lucky. We think only now in modern times when the world has been mostly civilized, but I always use the term, there's no more saber-toothed tigers. And I use that to refer to that since we are so civilized, we forget that we evolved in a world where everything was a threat. Now, that's where negativity bias actually can help us, because imagine if you're hunting and gathering and you hear a bush shaking and you assume that it's something that can harm you, hurt you, or even kill you. And you say, know what, I'm not going that way. You stay alive.
But you live to fight another day.
But if you're wrong, you simply just went the other way. But if you do the opposite and assume it's nothing, and it is nothing, cool. But if it is something, you're lunch. So this is why negativity bias is helpful to a degree, but the problem with most things and how our body is wired, it does its job too well sometimes. So think about the goals. What you're trying to do doesn't go your way the first time, I guess it's just meant not to happen. Or you focus too much of what can go wrong. We talk about personality traits like neuroticism, when you overstress and you think of every wrong thing that can happen. And guess what? We usually predict these things, and they say the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because you tend to put that focus and attention on things that aren't productive to your goals. So not necessarily it magically messes you up. It's just that you're not going to be doing everything efficiently because your brain can't fully focus on that. So don't put so much load on what's not happening or what couldn't happen, or you're just not worth trying, because obviously you're not going to get there. Now, will it stop you completely? Not necessarily, but why would you put even more barriers and burdens on top of you when you're trying to do what you need to do? Now, this next one goes hand in hand on the opposite side of the spectrum, optimism bias. Because with optimism bias, you're doing the polar opposite of negativity. You're looking at all the things that can go right. Now, we don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but at the same time, we need to know that there is chances for us to succeed. There is an opportunity. There is a way to get to where we want to be. But at the same time, we can't negate the fact there will be roadblocks, there will be barriers. I always use an analogy of a multiverse, right? When it comes to anxieties, worries, fears, look at every branch of that multiverse, every lane that it could go. Look at the side where you win the race. Look at the side when you lose the race. Look at the side where you get the job. Look at the side where you don't get the job. Look at the side where you don't even apply for the job. See where you fit there. So this is how optimism bias can be beneficial, by being aware that it can happen, but look at the parts that may not be the best scenario, the mediocre scenario, or sometimes the worst case scenario. That way, you're not gonna be overly zealous on all your endeavors, because there will be times when it doesn't work at all, and you're gonna feel some type of way, and that's fine, but don't set yourself up for failure. Now, self-serving bias, this is a perfect segue from optimism bias and negativity bias, because this is basically when you attribute more to what you do and kind of negate external circumstances. So for example, if you win a game or win a race or win an opportunity, it's all me. But if you lose, oh, it had to be someone else's fault or some external factor. Now, we talk a lot about locus of control. This is basically how much effort or emphasis we put on what we do versus what's in our direct control, or what we can influence, or what's directly out of our control. Knowing this balance is good, because there will be times where it's completely in your control and it goes bad, and you need to take accountability. And there's going to be times where it goes good and you need to congratulate yourself. But in my experience, in over a decade in this field, I notice people tend to put more emphasis when it goes wrong on themselves, and more emphasis on when it goes right on other things. So that's why with self-serving bias, you got to know that balance of, yes, I did that, I made it happen. But when it goes wrong, you still need to say, where did I go wrong? What did I do? How can it be changed? Because criticism is a big part of change. A lot of people think change is simply just saying, I'm going to do something, it's going to happen, and I'm done. But in all actuality, it's really about, I'm going to do something, evaluate it, critique it, get objective criticism from people outside of me, get criticism from myself. That's why recording things is great. See what you're doing right, see what you're doing wrong, and see where it can be changed and what role you directly played in it. So don't get too caught up on that self-serving bias. Now, I put groupthink on here. I was contemplating not doing it, and it would have been 13, lucky number 13, but I put groupthink because let's think about the whole new year, new me resolution scenario in general. It's literally what the world's doing, and it's not wrong to follow trends. I'm not saying that, but we live in a very social media driven age where everything's a trend or something we're following. We literally follow people online. So that's okay. But at the same time, we're gonna make sure this is something we truly wanna do. So when you think about, if I wanna go on a weight loss journey or change a career or just change a habit in general, is it because of me, or is it because this is the trend that's happening right now? So this is where groupthink comes in, because this is when people tend to go where the majority wants to go. Now, this makes sense if we go back to that no more saber-toothed tigers premise again. It makes sense in that sense, because you want to do what works. And back then in ancient times, what worked kept you alive. So you tend to follow the group. But this on the adverse of that, now that we're in modern terms, sometimes you can separate and go your own way because sometimes what's right for them may not be right for you. And you got to take that in consideration. Even if it looks like it's helping them and it's being better for them, you don't know if that's truly your path. And the big thing about achieving any goal is how much does it mean to you? If you talk about motivation, the word gets thrown about all the time. There's intrinsic, which is internal to what you want to do, and extrinsic, which is external, meaning what do you get out of it? You need a fair balance of both. But when you talk about groupthink, this is typically external. This is what you get in the validation outside of yourself, which tends to make people fall off much more easier because it's not something they truly care about. The things we're more passionate about and desire to do are the things we're going to stick to. I work with people in all types of lanes and I've seen them fall off their path simply because they didn't want to do it in the first place. Find out what you want to do, and once you find out what you want to do, find out how you're going to do it and how that ties in, because going with the crowd is not always the best choice. Now, it can help you in a general sense from a social standpoint, because on that side of it, it can motivate you because you have someone who gets what you're doing. It's a cohesive unit, and they can even motivate you because you see them accomplish it, but don't go over the top where that's the only reason. But that being said, the next one we're going to talk about is social comparison. I put this one in there because we're in the age of social media. I've kind of beat this point down at this point. So we don't want to get caught up in what other people are doing. Just like with groupthink, don't do it just for the crowd, but also don't compare yourself simply because, hey, I saw them get a new house, or hey, I saw them get married or have a baby. Whatever it is, that's their journey. We always say people post their highlight reels online. We live in a day and age where social media is an everyday part of our lives, and that's fine. I love it because it's how I'm even communicating this list to you as we speak. But we got to be mindful of, we can't take everything at face value because you do not know what's going on, good or bad, behind the scenes. You don't know the hard work it took for them to get that new house or that new job. You don't know the pitfalls they faced, or you don't know if it's really what it's supposed to be. Are they faking the phone? Is it just for keeping up appearances? Could they be completely unhappy behind their phones? We don't know. And this is why that social comparison can be very detrimental, especially when we're talking about New Year's resolutions, people trying to make changes. You see all these people posting what they're going to do or what they've started, and then they might fall off and you would never know, because what's a post? Especially if it's like something fitness related. All they have to do is post them at the gym. You may not see them doing the actual work. So don't get caught up on what everyone else is doing. That's the takeaway right here. Now, these next two, the planning fallacy and the Parkinson's law of triviality, they kind of go hand in hand, because with the planning fallacy is not getting enough time to actually accomplish the goal. I think this should have been maybe higher on the list, but like I said, it's not particular order. But to take this into consideration, if we're looking at the planning fallacy, this is underestimating how long do I need to accomplish this goal. So let's use fitness. It's probably one of the biggest resolutions most people are going to make for New Year's. So if let's say they want to lose 50 pounds, that's kind of a big number. I don't care where you're at in your journey. That's a lot. But how long are you going to do it? Is it going to be 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years? Whatever that number is, it's going to have to be dictated by the frequency and the duration. So if they plan, say, hey, I got to get it done in 3 months, and let's say 3 months is a reasonable time for whatever that goal is. Do I have the time to do it? The resources? Are there going to be obstructions? Like I said, you got to look at every route. And if there are obstructions, what I'm going to do when those happen. That's why it's important to plan it out, because when you do hit those road bumps, you're ready to pivot. It's not saying you want to look at every little thing that could go wrong, but you want to make sure that what you're doing can be shifted when need be. Now, that's where the Parkinson's law comes in, because with the triviality side of it, don't spend too much time on the things that don't truly matter. So for example, if I'm trying to get ready to go work out, let's use that same trend, and I'm more worried about how my outfit looks, and then I run out of time, it's like, oh, I only got 20 minutes to do something. So you're rushing, you may do a quick cardio workout and then go, but you didn't get to do the full hour and a half of your full workout. You got to put the emphasis on the things that really matter. The trivial things you may need to give a little attention to, because, hey, to a degree they matter, but if you put too much on them, you're not going to have enough time to carry out what really matters. And that's why the planning fallacy and this go hand in hand. So this is why I want to make sure we allocate our time and resources properly and are able to execute it in a timely manner that makes sense for the allotted time that's needed to accomplish the goal. Now, the final one, number 14. I saved this for last. This one was on purpose because this is actually one of my favorites and I talk about it all the time. It's survivorship bias. So this one, if you've seen my channel, I always bring this one up. And this is probably very important in consideration of other 13, because with survivorship bias, it's the tendency to put more emphasis on the people who made it, thus the survivors. So that's the winners, that's the entrepreneurs that become millionaires, the people that lose 100 pounds on their big weight loss journey. We only see those people because guess what? They're successful. That's where the tendency to see them helps. Now, the problem with this is if we only put the emphasis on the survivors or the winners, we're not seeing who's losing or failing, because if we don't look at the failures too, keyword two, we don't just want to look at the failures either. We need to see the hardships they face. Why did they go wrong? Why did that entrepreneur go out of business? Why did they lose $1 million investment? Why did they gain the weight right back after they lost it? Because with this, we get the full picture versus work hard, be consistent, because this video could have been 5 minutes of me just giving you affirmations and platitudes to make you feel good, but that's not what we're about. So that's why I wanted to give you the biases, because with survivorship bias, we can look at real history. There was a guy named Dino Fakaris, and he was the writer of the song I Will Survive. And you see why what I just did there. He got one of the most successful songs of the 70s. And you probably heard of this song at some point in your life, young or old, but he got it only because he didn't give up and he kept working after so many failures. But a lot of people don't know that. But if you say, oh, he just kept going, therefore he's great because he didn't give up, that's where the bias comes in, because on top of the fact he didn't give up, it's not just about that. What about the people who tried to make the record deal happen and didn't get signed or didn't get a hit record? See what I'm saying? So I told you the success of Dino Fakaris and getting a platinum selling song after all the hardships. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who did the same thing he did. They went to Hollywood or went to wherever they went to become a star, and it didn't happen. You got to think about that when you're doing your New Year's goals, because there's going to be people who are going to tell you, hey, I did this, so can you do that? That's great motivation. I'm not knocking that. And the beauty of social media, once again, that we can get a lot from this, but at the same time, don't let that write the whole narrative or story without knowing the other side of it. So this was 14 cognitive biases. That's why I said, if you can change these and understand how these work, you can reduce the amount of misjudgments that could lead you off your path and then have a better position to accomplish what you want to do. That's what goals are all about. Not about just having this magic one-stop route to the top. It's cumulative. I always tell people, goals and accomplishing them are cumulative. They're not linear. Linear is just going one point to another. Cumulative is every point, up, down, left, right, back, forth, loop-de-loop until you get to the end point. And that's what we got to do to get our minds right. So happy New Year. And let's do this, guys. You got it.